Listen on Global Player, the official LBC News app.
We've seen some remarkable scenes today. Julian Assange arriving back in his native Australia, a free man. The Wikileaks founder flew into the country's capital, Canberra, to be reunited with his family after reaching a plea deal with American authorities. He's pleaded guilty to a single charge of illegally obtaining and sharing classified documents. And his wife, Stella Assange, thanked supporters at a news conference in Canberra.
It took millions of people. It took people working behind the scenes, people protesting on the streets for days and weeks and months and years. And we achieved it.
Julian Assange, it was thought, was going to speak at that news conference, but he didn't. He didn't turn up there today. Let's speak to Dr. Matthew Alford, who's a politics lecturer at the University of Bath, and he's also a friend of the Assange family, who's been personally involved in the campaign for his release. Thank you for joining us on LBC News. Can I get your reaction to the events of the last 48 hours or so?
Well, we're all extremely happy, everyone who's been involved in this campaign. I mean, I've only been involved for the past couple of years or so. And I guess it's bittersweet because it has been a very, very long time coming. It's been an exhausting experience for Julian and his family. Julian had a mini stroke in court only a couple of years ago, so it has taken its toll on his health. But we're pleased at least to have a positive outcome at the end of it.
A very long-running campaign. Obviously, there was that 7-year stay in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, wasn't there, until the Ecuadorians decided that they'd had enough of him, and they eventually allowed the police to take him out of there. At the heart of this, campaigners would say that this was about freedom of speech. He is a controversial figure, though, Julian Assange, isn't he, because of the sheer volume of documents that he put in the public domain?
Well, he put a lot of documents in the public domain because he campaigned on a very wide range of issues about all sorts of incidents across the world, not just in the United States, but in Britain, in corruption across the planet, false flag attacks in war, BNP membership lists, Kenyan corruption and all sorts. So he produced an awful lot of material, as any good journalist and any good publisher should. Ultimately, if you try and change a very twisted and compromised system of power, you're going to inevitably be controversial, and that's where he ended up.
And what are you referring to there? What is twisted?
I mean that we have an international system which is not usually in favour of the populations of their own country, and that includes the establishment, for example, the military-industrial complex in the United States and in many other countries around the world. And so it's very necessary, but inevitable that if you do stand up against a system of war and secrecy and surveillance, that you are going to end up butting up against those people. Julian was just extremely good at doing that for a protracted period of time. And they decided to not only throw the book at him, but throw everything else at him as well.
I mean, we do need some level of, I mean, I don't know if quite secrecy is quite the word, but, we do have, espionage go on, don't we? Countries do keep tabs on other countries and that kind of thing. There has to be a certain amount of information that needs to be sort of classified, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. But bear in mind that the things that Julian Assange was most vociferously pursued for were nothing like that. They were war crimes. I mean, most famously, the collateral murder video of American service personnel gunning down at least a dozen innocent people, which included Reuters journalists. That's the thing that he was most famous for doing. But also surveillance, illegal surveillance. And, of course, there was surveillance done on him himself whilst he was in the embassy illegally, which usually would have led to a court case like this being thrown out on its ear.
Where do we go from here? What do you think that Julian Assange will be doing next?
I suspect that he's got quite a close family. I think that Stella is a fairly private individual. I mean, they were married for several years without anyone really they were together for several years and had children with very, very minimal publicity. She's only really come into the limelight in the past 2 or 3 years and has done an incredible job at raising the profile of her husband's case. I suspect that they'll spend quite a lot of time recuperating and having a normal life. I mean, their kids are still pretty small as well. So I think that's what will happen. Ultimately, I hope that Julian in some way returns to political life, but I suspect it will be a slow and steady transition. That's just my hunch.
Dr. Matthew Alford, thank you for joining us on LBC News, a politics lecturer at the University of Bath and a friend of the Assange family who's been involved in the campaign for his release.
LBC News.